ThatGreatBusinessShow.com is brought to you by De Facto Shaving Oil, the best anyone can get. Made in Ireland, sold worldwide.
Welcome to episode 62 of That Great Business Show, posting on the 19th of November 2021. I am, as always, Conal O'Moran. Another busy pod coming up, so no messing about. Stay listening if you want to know more about how to crack the US food and drinks markets, what the future of cash is, how to make money from just hanging around, and we're joined by the former Miss Moneypenny, whose latest business tackles the mature skin market. Yes, it's a thing. Real businesses, real business solutions. And as always, this knowledge is only brought to you thanks to our sponsor, De Facto Shaving Oil, maker of the world's best shaving oil. Forget the hassle at airport security. Dump your shaving foam and always carry a 25ml bottle of De Facto whenever you travel. Sorted. DeFactoShave.com.
That Great Business Show.
I'm always interested in jobs the school careers guidance teacher never told me about. For example, I was never told I could be a revenue growth generator. And in case you don't think a revenue growth generator is a real job, well, I have one in studio with me right now. US-based Katie Knight has some CV. She's worked with food and drinks companies right across the US and currently is hired by restaurant chain TGI Friday, based in Dallas, Texas. She's also very recently joined the board of one of our own favourites here at Team GBS, that's the Meath-based liqueur maker Cool Swan, to help them crack the US market. Katie is home for just a few weeks, and Mary Sadler, boss at Cool Swan, said we must have Katie join Team GBS to talk about food and drink opportunities across the vast US market. Katie Knight, welcome to That Great Business Show.
Thanks so much, Conal.
You just told me you were kicked out of college.
I was.
Well, don't just stop there. Everybody's saying, really?
So it was kind of politely suggested that maybe I don't come back for the third year.
Why?
Well, I was at DIT in Mountjoy Square. Lovely place, great place to go. And just didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wasn't that interested in studying marketing and French. And in fact, you mentioned that, your school guidance counselor, they told me that I'd never make it in marketing. And in fact, I've become a CMO. So don't always believe what the school guidance counselor tells you.
And you just told me now that you have been made CMO at TGI Friday, and we know TGI Friday very well. Used to be, thank God, it's Friday, isn't that right? Is that the same?
Yeah, I'm actually the Chief Digital Officer of TGI Friday.
So you got a new job?
New job, yes.
Only just in the past...
In the last 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And the other job that you've got is?
I am a non-executive director on Cool Swan.
Which is why you're here, I hope.
It is.
Because the lovely Mary Sadler, our pal, said that you know completely and absolutely everything about marketing food and drinks in the US. And in the next 20 minutes, I'd like you I'm going to shut up. I'm just going to say, do this, do this, do this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that.
Sure.
Away you go.
Great, thanks. Well, I started my career at Miller Brewing Company in the US, and this is when it was owned by Philip Morris, so we had a lot of money behind us as far as a cigarette company. The couple of things I learned at Miller Brewing Company, first of all, the food and drinks business in the United States is completely based on relationships. It's actually a very small industry, and a lot of the same people move from job to job in and out of food and beverage, whether that's in the supplier side, where I was at Miller Brewing Company, at the wholesale or distributor side, or in the retail side. It's also a very fragmented business. So, for example, in the UK, you would have Tesco, who would be basically every household in the UK would shop at Tesco. That's not the case in the United States. It's very regionally fragmented, state by state, as far as who the major retailers are. So in the southeast of the United States, you'd have Publix, which is a very large grocery store chain. Out on the West Coast, you'd have Albertsons. And then kind of across the United States, you'd have a scattering of other regional grocery chains. But creating brands in the United States can be very easy, or it can be very hard.
And very expensive, I presume.
Very expensive. So what I do today at TGI Fridays, I actually manage virtual brands. So these are food or restaurant brands that we create because we see a need or a gap in the market.
How interesting. Explain.
Yeah, sure. So this actually came out of, it was starting right before the pandemic, and then it just exploded during the pandemic. So think about a restaurant that has a large kitchen in the back and has labor that is there, and they're there to work a shift. But they're not at full capacity. and there is possibility for them to cook something else. And for a delivery company like Uber Eats or DoorDash, or I believe here in Ireland you have Just Eats, to come and pick up that order and send it out without creating any impact or stress upon the restaurant dine-in experience. So what we've been able to do at Fridays is we have 3 virtual brands, we call them. One is a chicken brand that has a specialty chicken sandwich that you cannot get at TGI Fridays, but you can order it on Uber Eats and it's delivered straight to your door. We also have one called Apps All Around, which takes a lot of TGI Fridays favorites like potato skins and mozzarella sticks. And you can order that as through a digital storefront, basically. So right now we have close to 2,000 digital storefronts, which contribute a significant amount of additional sales to the restaurants that we would never have thought of doing 5 years ago.
Wow. You have just opened my head. That is fantastic. Keep going.
Sure.
That was brilliant.
So coming into the US market, you have to have a full knowledge of how the supplier, wholesaler, and retailer relationship works. And I'm specifically talking from the alcohol beverage side. So there's many suppliers. There's thousands of wine companies. There's lots and lots of spirits distillers, and lots of people who make all sorts of different things. And when you try to come into the US, the first thing you have to do is find an importer. So that's somebody who's going to bring your product into the United States, and they're going to want to get paid for that. So there's a cut into your gross margin. The second thing you need to do legally in the United States is you have to have a wholesaler or distributor. And distributors have the license to deliver product to the retailer, state by state and sometimes county by county. So there's a lot of work that has to be done, a lot of footsteps that have to be thrown down, a lot of phone calls. And again, it goes back to being a relationship business. So for example, with Cool Swan, right now we're trying to find a national distributor in the United States that can enable us to then deliver the product to the alcohol beverage stores or what's called an off-premise store, so that we can make the product available to the public. What we can't do is go straight to the retailer and say, please sell my product. That is not allowed. And that goes all the way back to prohibition in the United States.
I knew there was a prohibition side to that. So you cannot avoid having a chunk of your change taken out of your pocket.
Absolutely. So somewhere it could be upwards of 25 to 30% is going to go to that wholesaler. And the wholesalers...
You've just seen my jaw drop. 25 to 30% for doing sweet nothing, really.
Yeah, and it's really changed. So when I started in the beer business in 2000, we had a lot of sales reps who worked at the wholesaler, and our job was to engage with those reps to make sure that they were constantly had our products and our portfolio. I had 14 brands. They had to have those products top of mind, and they were going out and getting the shelf space. Over the last 20 years, the wholesalers have become very smart and said, I don't want to carry that expense anymore. So I'm going to push that expense to the supplier. So now the supplier has to provide the sales force, and they can work with my team, which is now much smaller at the wholesaler, and we'll use our trucks and we'll deliver your stuff to the retailer. But the entire cost of the sales force is now shifted to the supplier, where it used to be at the wholesaler level.
Double ouch.
Double ouch. Yeah.
Tell me that you have some seriously brilliant ideas on how to avoid or get around some of these issues.
Yeah. You have to have knowledgeable people in the United States. So
where would you find them?
So there's lots of them. So there are some great people who have either had experience at Gallo, experience at Diageo, or any of the major suppliers, Pernod Ricard. LinkedIn, go on and start looking on LinkedIn. And that's where I find a lot of people make a lot of connections. People who, and don't just focus on people who have worked for the supplier side, but also people who have worked at retail. So for example, I came out of Total Wine & More, which is the largest alcohol retailer in the United States. The people who work there have come from all over the place, some of them with a wine and beverage background, but a lot of them with not. And when you spend 2 or 3 years at Total Wine, it gives you a massive education in how the alcohol beverage industry works in the United States, because they are one of the largest, and they tend to move the market.
Is there any easier way? Can you duck under anything?
No.
Can you?
You really can't duck under in the US. And again, it goes back to prohibition. And what came out of there was the Tied House Law. So TIED, the Tied House Law, which meant that a supplier could not have an interest in a wholesaler who could not have interest in a retailer. So there's 3 tiers there. There's the supplier, the wholesaler, and the retailer. So we call it the 3-tier distribution system, a 3-tier system in the United States. There's no way around that because it's so highly regulated.
And is there anybody, Mr. Biden, or anybody thinking of ever changing that to make it a little bit easier?
No. So the wholesalers...
The world's center of competition avoids competition as, not for the first time.
I will tell you, the wholesalers are a very strong lobby in Washington, D.C., and they have no intention of ever letting the ability for a supplier to ship directly to a retailer, because quite obviously they would lose their piece of the business. Now, what has come up over the last few years has been the shift to e-commerce and online ordering. A lot of the wineries are able to ship directly to consumers, so DTC to consumers. So if you go to Napa, for example, and you go visit Napa and you go into the tasting room and you want to buy a few bottles of what you just tasted because it's lovely, they are legally, in most states, able to ship that to you. So it completely bypasses.
But do you have to be in person in the Napa vineyard?
No, you can actually order it online.
Okay, so in fact there are ways around it.
There are ways around that. But it's really has been limited a lot to the wine companies. I would expect in the future it'll move more into beer and other ones. The beer is a heavy product, right? And because people buy it in bulk. So it's a little bit more difficult to ship a 24-pack of beer than it is to ship, 2 or 3 bottles of wine.
And have the wine vineyards, have they not started maybe shipping in paper or in some different kind of packaging? Because, of course, bottles, one of the big weights is the glass, obviously.
They are. The primary packaging for wine, obviously, same as here. I think it's 700 mils here. It's 750 mils in the United States. That's how people expect to get their wine. However, there has been an explosion in wines in Tetra Paks or wines in cans, which are great for kind of going to the park, going to a picnic, taking to a concert.
Going to the park. It's no wonder you got chucked out of DIT.
I know.
And in fact, I think one of our favourites on that great business show, Tony Smurfett, they've made a very, very good business out of wine packaging as well.
Yes, they have. And another Irish company, actually, Ardagh, is a big player in the glass and tin can bottles packaging.
And did you see that they yesterday bought a new Canadian company, I think, which is going to put coloured stenciling onto the cans.
That's fantastic. I didn't read that. That's great news.
Mr. Coulson, yeah. So that is, anything else we should, I want to know as much as I can, as quickly as I can.
Sure.
So I'm a drinks company here. Yep. Presumably it's going to be obviously much easier if I am a distiller.
Yes.
High value.
High value,
okay. So I go onto LinkedIn, as you suggest, and I find somebody, John or Mary, who knows something about distribution.
Yep.
Then what? Must I have somewhere a base?
So, no, you don't need to have a base. You could be virtual. It would help to have feet on the ground in the United States. The distributors look to have somebody in the US. But once you find somebody, you then have to kind of bifurcate. So you have to go in 2 ways. One, you need to go and find a retailer that's going to carry your product. And then you have to work backwards to find a distributor.
I have to find the retailer.
You have to find the retailer.
What's my distributor doing?
Again, he has a truck and he has a warehouse, or she has a truck and a warehouse, and they are there primarily to deliver the product to the retailer. That is their only job.
Okay. You're putting me off this business very quickly.
Well, I should, because it's a really exciting business.
I mean, it's huge.
It's huge. I've been in the business for a long time. I stepped out to go into restaurant business, back to alcohol, and then back into the restaurant, which is TGI Fridays. A large amount of our business is alcohol because of the bar. So it's a really exciting business. It's a very, very fun business. And I never knew that you could have a career in alcohol. That was just not on the table. It was very much, you're going to go and get a marketing degree and then you'll go work for some very boring bank or mortgage company. And that's where you'd end up. And that's like the summers I would come back to Ireland. Not to say AIB is boring, but I did work at AIB. That was my summer job. I worked at the EBS, was a summer job. I worked at Green's bookshop in town. And then
unfortunately now gone.
I know. And I loved that job. That was one of my first jobs. And then I ended up back in the US and I literally fell into the beverage business that I didn't even know existed. So I would encourage, so I know we're talking about how do I get my business started in the US, but also if you're in college and you don't know what you want to do, go searching for something and follow your passion. Because my passion was wine. And I followed that passion into an alcohol beverage.
And I think
career.
Jameson it's Jameson, haven't they? They've got a wonderful graduate program.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And Ireland and the UK is very unique where they have these wonderful graduate programs. those don't really exist in the United States, or at least I couldn't find them when I was coming into the business in the mid-90s. And I fell into the business I fell into the business through an agency. So there was a huge sports and entertainment agency in Wisconsin where I was living that had the Miller Brewing Company account. And what we did is we went around the world putting on concerts for Miller Brewing Company. We actually did one here in Vicker Street for the year 2000 with the Smashing Pumpkins. And what happened, I created relationships with the people at Miller Brewing Company. And when a job opened up, they reached out to me, and that's how I got my foothold into the industry.
Okay. Now, what else? Because we have to finish up on the drinks, because I want to get onto food as well.
Yes.
So what else on the drinks side should people who are trying to go from here to there do?
You need to have a very good understanding of who your customer is going to be. So find someone who can help you segment the market, find out where the gap in the market is. So if you're going to go into the drinks industry, don't go in as a follower. You need to go in as an innovator, and you need to find out where is the next gap going to be and how does it deliver margin to the retailer and to whatever wholesale network you're going to use. There's absolutely no sense coming in now, because the market's so saturated, as coming in as a me too. You're not going to be successful.
You know, these, what are they called? Hard colas or something like that? Is
Yeah.
I mean, that was going to be the hugest thing, and that seems to have disappeared within about 2 years.
Yeah, and hard seltzers was huge as well. Again, ready to drink. It was single serve. That
Just to explain, a hard seltzer had alcohol. It was a bubbly.
Yeah, it's a malted beverage with flavorings. And a lot of it was used to appeal to a more female market, because more men drink beer than women. But there's a huge market for female drinkers. So they started to add flavorings and made it less beer tasting. And it's more like a malt beverage alcohol. That became a huge business. White Claw became one of the largest in the United States. But it's now matured. So we're looking for what's the next thing. Like, what will be the next entry? Is it going to be CBD based? More likely, lots and lots of suppliers are getting into CBD based drinks.
That would be cannabis to listeners, yes.
Yes.
And so what does Katie think might be the next big thing? Do you think it'll be cannabis-based? Yeah?
I think it'll be cannabis-based. There's already a very large market at retail for cannabis-based lotions and, things that can help you with aches and pains, sleeping. I think as more and more Americans and more states vote to allow the use of marijuana on a recreational area, and CBD is different from marijuana because it doesn't have the THC, but the drinks, I think they just provide a different level of energy. And people are seeking something new. And that's always what's happening in the United States. We're always seeking something new and interesting.
We had John Teeling on the Great Business Show, and I think he said at that time that he was looking at the cannabis space, but I haven't spoken with him for a short while. I must find out what the latest on that one is. Now, we have to very rapidly move on to food.
Food!
What food would you go to in Ireland that might crack a US market? The problem is, it's got low value, and you have to ship 3,000 miles across the sea, etc. And it has to have a shelf life.
I think I think you could crack the American market by making something in the United States that likely has more of an Irish or international flavor. So we got such great food here. We've got great beef, right? We've got great dairy. There would have to be something that was very unique, and maybe it's some sort of hamburger, even though that's a very saturated market. There could be an opportunity for that, because I continue to see more and more restaurants setting up as hamburger chains. It's like, it's always a better burger that we're trying to get to. I think there's lots of interesting things. I'm not sure I could put my finger on exactly what something would be to come in, but I don't think you'd be able to export it. I think you might have to bring the flavors of Ireland and then create something in the US that led to a product that was interesting.
I don't know whether you're familiar with Lismore. That is a brand down in Waterford, and my God, do they produce some gorgeous stuff.
Yes.
So maybe Lismore should be listening to us. But they do listen, because we've had them on.
Great.
Of course.
Yeah.
So what would you not bring to the States? Now, again, it is fraught, because there are rules and regulations, imports, problems, and all that kind of stuff. We have a stereotypical view of the States as being that they want sugared foods.
No.
Is there? No. Tell me. Talk to me.
So that's actually a really interesting thing you bring up, Connell, because there is a portion of the States that likes really sugared foods, but there's also a massive market out there for spicy, hot, savory. If you look at the growth of, for example, tequila right? Which tequila was never a sipping drink. It was something you threw into a margarita. And it's now become a very premium product in the United States. Spiciness, so the whole growth of Nashville hot chicken within the US is all something that's happened in the last 10 years. So the American palate has gotten much, much more adventurous, and that's due to the multiculturalism of the United States. I think by 2030, Caucasians will be in the minority in the United States, and it'll be much more
Spanish
and Latino oriented.
And what else might they like to eat?
Yeah, so
from Ireland.
It's from Ireland. Well, they eat a lot of chicken. So if you think
they've got all the chickens in the world over there. That's what's that American company that makes zillions of chickens? Starts with a C. Yeah, or anyway,
Cargill or something.
Cargill, that's the one.
Yes. I think, our dairy here.
Dairy, okay.
Dairy, right? So I think Kerrygold does a fantastic job in the US, right? I can find Kerrygold cheese most places that I go. But I'm not sure they've pushed it into the mainstream. They do it for cooking at home, but where can they have partnerships in the United States where Kerrygold cheese is a premium part of the menu? So for example, Frank's Red Hot is a very famous hot sauce in America, and they've gone out and done partnerships with lots and lots of different restaurant companies so that they're featured on the menu. And then there's a huge buy that comes in for Frank's Red Hot because they're using it in the restaurant. Where can some of our Irish dairies do that? Where it becomes a very premium add-on, and then they get the logo on the menu, and then they get the purchase comes in as well. So
that's clever.
Yeah,
that
it could be a great thing. Now, there are probably many premium restaurants that are using Kerrygold products or any other Irish dairy products, but I just haven't seen it in a larger way.
Okay, but I mean, if you have a spicing product particularly start knocking on the doors. Now, where or how, what doors would you start knocking on?
Again, you have to find an agent in the US. You need to have somebody with knowledge.
There are 320 million people there. Where do you start?
Well, you start with people that you already know in the business, okay? So all of us know someone in America.
Her name is Katie Knight. And she's on LinkedIn.
You start with someone you know in the business, and then they put you in touch with possibly a manufacturer who might be interested in producing your product, and then they would help you find distribution. But again, you're going to have to go out and find the retailer yourself or the end customer. Like, that is the hardest part of the work, and it's very difficult to do that when you're based in Ireland. And that is why at least having one person at the beginning on the street helping you do that is very important. And like with Cool Swan, eventually we're going to have to build a whole team in the United States as the business grows.
And it will grow because
we hope so.
It is the world's best cream liqueur, isn't that right?
It is absolutely the world's best cream liqueur. It's number one.
Number one, but she also, Mary Sadler was telling me that the Wine Spectator gave her 96, and they only give that out once every 10 years, and 10 years running.
We have got it, yes.
That is fantastic. Yeah. Okay, final question, because you know my final question.
Yeah.
The second final question, back to TGI Friday. Wearing that hat, you've set up your virtual restaurants, which I think is really interesting. Anybody listening should be adopting that idea here.
Yep.
What's the other next big thing that you're scratching at, looking at in the States on the food side?
On the food side. We are leaning into our multicultural audiences. Majority of the revenue for TGI Fridays comes from African American or Hispanic households, so they are hugely fond of the brand. So we're looking to see what products we need to put on the menu that meet the brand manifesto, right? It's fun, celebratory, it's a classic American bar and grill, but it's also kind of moving with the trends. So we've started to add more spice to the menu. We're starting to, without me giving away any secrets, there's a new type of way to eat chicken that we're looking at that we think will be very, very interesting. That's also very portable. So as we think about our off-trade business, so the amount of takeaway food that we do has tripled since the pandemic, and it's staying at that level. Like, it hasn't gone down. So we need to make sure that everything that we design is designed for takeaway as well as for dining in the restaurant. And I think, whoever can crack the code on keeping French fries hot for takeaway.
And crispy.
Now, Wendy's has done a little bit of work on that. My good friend John Lee, who's the head of culinary at Wendy's, he's done some great work, and they've just brought out a new French fry that claims to maintain its crispness and heat because of the packaging that it's in all the way home.
So it's the packaging is the secret.
The packaging is a big part because the fries, if they go in a styrofoam box, they're going to sweat and then they go soggy.
And we hate that.
Everybody hates soggy chips. I have to tell you, I had the best chip of my life last night at Pichet over by Trinity.
We know it well, yeah.
I had the most amazing Côte de Boeuf and French fries. So thank you to everyone there last night. It was delicious.
Well, we shall give them a shout out and we will tag them on the social, etc.
Thank you.
Anyway, Katie, your final question.
Oh dear.
Hire in a heartbeat. Who would Katie Knight hire in a heartbeat? And if you say Mary Sadler, you're at the door.
Well, of course I'd hire Mary
We'd
Sadler.
love to have her, but...
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say somebody you probably don't know yet, but you'll find out. And my husband will laugh when he hears it because he calls him my workout boyfriend. So my workout boyfriend is a guy called Dennis Morton. And Dennis Morton is with Peloton. And I don't know if you've heard of the Peloton brand, but that's the bike that has gone crazy in the United States. And it's the
We're
at-home
suing
workout.
everybody now
Yes.
because everybody's
Yes.
gone and they've copied them.
Yes. So Dennis Morton is just a very real person. And I like to work with people who are very real. And that is because of how I've had to build my relationships within the United States and how you never burn a bridge, right? It's the biggest lesson I've always learned because you always go back to where you have to ask somebody for a favor, right? Dennis Morton is just the epitome of a great guy, just very personable. I think he could sell snow to an Eskimo. So
Where did you meet him?
I didn't. I've never met him. He
With a name
talks to
like
me.
Morton, he must be Irish.
He might be, but
Must.
must be. I'm sure he has a cousin somewhere. But you could put anything on him. He could sell anything, and I'd love to work with him.
Okay, Dennis Morton, you will then now be joining Team GBS because Katie Knight wants you, and she wants you now.
I want him now.
Katie Knight, Revenue Growth Generator, and the new title is
Chief Digital Officer.
at TGI Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on that great business show.
Thank you, Connell.
Viscosity. When you shave, you want the highest viscosity because it helps the blade run smoother. De facto, the world's best shaving oil, has incredible viscosity. That's why De facto leaves your face, underarms, or legs nick-free. Higher viscosity makes blades last longer. De facto is the best for your skin and your pocket. DeFactoShave.com.
Everyday accounting can be a bit of a drama for SMEs. However, BigRedCloud.com takes the drama away with its simple and easy to use cloud-based accounting and payroll software designed for SME owners. Raise and send invoices, manage VAT reports and obligations, run management reports, link directly to Irish banks, automatically import purchase invoices, and so much more. All with 5-star customer support. BigRedCloud.com, 100% Irish owned and a proud member of Team GBS.
Conobio, that great business show.
Do you remember in business when cash was king? Well, that was pre-COVID, and it didn't take too long for us to switch almost totally to card or phone payments, and that is very good news for my next guest, Dave Byrne, who founded his company Jeweltron 30 years ago, almost to the day. So back in the days of crinkly pound notes, and for younger listeners, before the euro, there was the pound. But Jeweltron are trying to do away with all that kind of dirty stuff. Jeweltron is a company specializing in cash processing and payment solutions for banking, retail, and the hospitality sectors. So let us see what the future is for cash. Dave Byrne, welcome to that great business show.
Hi, Connell. Very nice to meet you. And great to be here.
30 years is a long time to be doing the same thing.
Well,
Regrets? I've had a few. No?
no regrets, and definitely haven't been doing the same thing for 30 years. I suppose looking back 30 years is a long time, but it seems to go by very quickly.
When you're enjoying yourself.
When you're enjoying
yeah,
yourself. Yeah. And I suppose if you look back 30 years, it's 3 decades. 3 very different decades in terms of business. 3 very different decades in terms of what we do, what we did.
That's
how we
moves.
evolved. Yeah, well, we made it move as well. So we definitely believe in looking ahead and seeing, as you described, you're looking ahead at cash. So we've been doing that for quite some time. So believe it or not, Connell, we brought in cashless payment systems 25 years ago.
And where did that idea come from for you, that you thought this was a great idea to get rid of cash?
No, I wouldn't say we ever thought it was a great idea to get rid of cash, and I still don't. I think what happened was it was probably an accident that we acted on. As I recall it, about 1995, we got a call from a hospital down the country who asked us to fix their cashless payment system, to fix their counting machine. So one of our engineers drove down, fixed the coin counting machine. And when he was there, the guy said, what about this yoke on the wall? And it was a very early cashless payment top-up loader. So it looked like a car park payment machine, but you actually put credit onto your company card using cash. So our guy opened it up.
That sounds very, very archaic, doesn't it?
Well, there's still some people using it and they're doing it very, very well, and it works extremely well.
But how do I put the cash onto the card? You put the card into this little machine, but do you have to put notes in as well or something? Or
that's one option.
Oh,
we have a number
my.
of different ways. But don't forget, this was 25 years ago. We'd never seen this before. Our engineer opened it up, and there was the payment devices were a coin acceptor and a note acceptor. And that's what we did at the time. So it was no problem for our guy to fix it. Having fixed it, the company down the country rang the supplier from the UK who got in touch with us, and we had a discussion with them. We thought it was a great idea. And for about 2 years, we gave it socks trying to sell it everywhere. And it was a real slow burn. And then suddenly, everybody liked it.
Why? What clicked it?
I think there's many benefits to this. If you think of a hospital or a factory or any kind of big employer who have their own canteen, have their own restaurant and maybe vending machines, etc., and they might be located quite a bit from an ATM or a bank, so they made it easy for the staff to top up securely onto their staff purse, which was controlled by their card. And initially the card had a chip in it back in the day. Now everything's in the cloud. Things have evolved, things have changed. But the core principle is the same. It's quicker than cash. It's more secure. It's more hygienic. There's no administration. There's no reconciling. There's no going to the bank with it. So from a corporate hospitality point of view, it fit very well. So we'd have a lot of big tech, big pharma, healthcare, manufacturing, utilities, lots of big companies, a lot of big Fortune 500 or FDI companies are using our cashless payment systems.
Now, hold it right there, because I know you a while, and you came out of Aer Lingus. Mm-hmm. You had nothing to do with this area.
Absolutely.
I mean, absolutely not, you mean?
No, absolutely not. No,
and how come now? What have you got? What's your secret sauce that you've managed to get all these lovely, big, brand name clients?
I think the most important thing in Dualtron has been our staff, the people we hired. And absolutely no question, they're our greatest asset. I'm not just saying that. We set out on day one with 4 people, 2 co-founder directors, sales guys, bit of everything. We had a lovely girl who ran the office and a terrific service engineer right from day one. So before we had a single customer, we had someone to answer the phone, do all the office work, and us 2 running around the place trying to sell everything, and we had a super guy to offer service right away. So in the very early days, we approached big banks and we said, look, we're clued in on all this, what currency that you use, how you count it, how you sort it. We can do better for you. We can actually do a local job.
Were you clued in?
Very clued in. The previous company I worked in, I worked with a large manufacturer of cash handling equipment who are now gone. They've been taken over a few times, but they were a leader in this at the time, and I took to it like a duck to water. And the engineer who I approached and worked with us was very experienced in that area. But we were able to give the banks in Dublin, in Ireland, all around the country, great service. So they were very good to us. They gave us kind of 6 months to see what we could do, prove ourselves. And that was all we wanted. That's, in fact, if you think about it, when you're selling, all you want is give me a chance. You're not going to go in to somebody and say, change everything to us. You're just saying, give me 5%, give me 2% of what you buy. Let me show you what we can do. So that 6 months flew by, and I'm glad to say 3 of the biggest banks in Ireland are still dealing with us for various bits and pieces to do with cash handling.
Are there 3
30
banks
years
left
later
nowadays?
There are. And we over the years we'd have got other banks. Some of them are now left the market, but that was how we got into the cash handling area. And to go back to your first point, when we spotted that opportunity with the hospital customer ringing up about the cashless payments, we said, right, maybe this is something in the future. Maybe cash is reducing. We've been hearing about cash reducing for 30 years. It definitely is slowing down, but back then it didn't really drop as quick as people expected it to. So the cashless payment system has grown as the cash, I suppose, has reduced. And now, I mean, whatever way you want to pay, we can help customers take payment. So we would be a payment services company now rather than just cash handling. So we've cashless, which is closed world, contactless, which is open world. You have Apple Pay, Google Pay. We can do all those things. Pay by your phone, pay by a fob, smartwatch if you want to. So whatever way you want to pay, we'll help you take payment and run your business better. So that's the broader scope of what we do now.
That was the sales pitch, I think, was it?
A little bit. But I'm just trying to explain, we're not really a cash handling company solely anymore. Yes, we're very definitely a cash handling company, but we have other strings to our bow.
But you do know, because you must think about this, you must sit around tables, board tables and others, wondering, what is the future of cash? Now, you kind of hinted there that cash wasn't disappearing that fast. Mm-hmm. And watch young people. Cash is gone. In fact, I had I had to pay somebody in cash today, and I couldn't find any cash.
I think certainly for some people they prefer to use the card. And I think the pandemic has probably urged it on a bit. Hurried it up a little bit.
Do you use cash?
Occasionally, yes, I do.
How occasionally is occasionally?
I probably use about 50-50, but it depends on what I'm buying.
Really? Yeah. I cannot remember, except for this morning, that I needed to pay somebody. I can't remember the last time I dipped into my wad of cash under the bed.
Okay, now I know where your cash is. No, I think one of the most important things is that you have to be looking ahead all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know who said it first, Sun Tzu or somebody said, time spent in reconnaissance is seldom wasted. You look ahead and you say, where is the market going? What direction are things going? So with cash now, we're offering retail and other customers the opportunity to effectively go cashless from their own staff point of view, but have a cash handling solution at the point of sale. So you may have seen them in some locations already where you go up to pay your bill, you're presented with a charge, you can enter cash if you want, and it'll give you change. So it recycles the change back to you. So that's a cash handling solution in an environment where the end customer doesn't want to handle cash, doesn't want his staff to be touching cash.
That sounds like the future, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you do things. You evolve, you try and anticipate where can we add value? What can we do that's different?
But tell me about that process. That's really, again, I'm always conscious on the podcast that we have an SME audience who just wants to understand how could we do our business better, not just on cash, but when we're thinking about new solutions for whatever product they're producing. Do you sit around a table, or do you have head of big ideas, or do you go into the universities, or where do you go for the thinking?
Probably all of above. Just to give you a couple of examples, we would have worked with Intertrade, the North-South
Intertrade
support
Ireland,
body. Yeah. So they helped us with develop an innovation program. It sounds huge, but it's a small thing in a small company. But it gave us a process for looking through ideas, like going from kind of bright idea to actually making it work. But most importantly, getting rid of it if it's not going to work. So the fail fast, fail cheap thinking is very important, because I think it's, everybody knows somebody had a great idea and they hung on to it too long and they soaked too much money into it. That's a bad thing to do. So we learned that. We're constantly talking to customers, people who are dealing with us for a long time. We ask them, I suppose the simplest way of condensing it is, where are you feeling the pain? What can we do that'll help you run your business better?
And do you actually ask that question?
Directly,
yeah. You pick up the phone and you have a chat and you say, before
COVID now, even myself, I would have been out and about meeting people on a regular basis, as often as it was reasonable. I wouldn't be calling to them every week or that, but if I met somebody who I hadn't seen for a while...
oh geez, here comes Dave again.
Yeah. So it is important to actually ask sometimes very openly, what do you think of us? What are we doing right? What could we do better? And what's the harm?
Did you ever get a really unpleasant answer?
Not a really unpleasant. I got a few funny ones, all right.
Such as?
One manager in a large organisation wanted to marry our service engineer. That was, I think she meant he was very good. I don't think it was anything romantic. No. People like our staff. They like the service, and I constantly get, and I'm not just saying this, I constantly get, we'd be lost without him or we're lost without her, and that's the best compliment I can get. I love hearing that they're good, rather than hearing that the name of the company is good. It's if they're doing a good job, people will keep coming back to us. And I think the most important thing is our byline is, you can count on Jultron, and it's a play on counting and play on reliability and responsiveness. And it stood us in good stead over the years. we live up to it. I hope we do. People keep coming back or stay with us for a long time. The staff we hire the best we can. We train them. I'm big into training, big into investing in the people.
What kind of training would you do?
Well, we've had people go through university, do master's programs. We've had people do, all sorts of training. For example,
And you pay?
Yeah. Our customer service, for example, everybody in the company gets customer service training, whether they're customer service or anything else.
Get away.
Yeah.
And who does that?
Well, we over the years, we one of the companies we dealt with is a company called TSS Training, and they would have come to us and we'd agree, this is what we want, a customer care program. So we developed best practice as we saw it, and they developed it into a process for customer touch points. So it's every phone call you get, every email, any something on the web that comes in, what you put up in the blog, every touch point you have with the customer. What's the best way? So what we did was we facilitated this, and basically what we did was we put people from different parts of the company together, and they came up, different members of different teams, with this is the best way to answer the phone, this is the best way to ask for a referral, this is the best way to package something, this is the best way to invoice it, whatever that was. Once it was a touch point with the customer.
And everybody gets this training, and is it repeated, or do you have to?
you have to repeat it every few years, I suppose. You couldn't do it every few months now, but you definitely, we would formally repeat it every few years, but we'd informally remind people of, let's get it right first time, let's follow through, let's own everything until completion, good practice. And I think you have to set your standards high, but people like that. I think people really like to be in a place that cares. And if they say, well, I'm going to be asked about this and I'm going to be measured on this, not in a bad way, but, I got a pat in the back if I'm good and a kick in the backside if I'm not. People like that, and they like to know I'm going to move up if I do well and I'll be rewarded. And I think that's very important.
You started with 4 people. Where are you now?
We have 18. It kind of hovers between 18 and 20, up and down. Sometimes we'll take on a temp for something or a project work, whatever.
Any problems finding people at the moment? Because on previous episodes of That Great Business Show, everybody was telling me they cannot find staff.
Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, we haven't been actively looking for somebody in the last, with the pandemic and that, we're not hiring actively just at the moment. But definitely I've heard that from a number of sources. It depends on the area as well. I think tech is...
tech is impossible.
At the moment.
But so is building. Anybody with a trade.
Yeah.
Doctors, nurses, you can try. There's an awful lot of...
Yeah, there seems to be an undersupply of certain places, all right, yeah. It's a big problem.
Now, another big problem is that cash was great back in the day because you could feel it, touch it, see it, and you could also look at the watermark. You must be plagued, not your company, but the world is definitely plagued with fake. Yeah. Fake cash, fake invoices, fake... everything, the hijackers.
That's where I suppose where we started as subject matter experts in that. I mean, banknote sorting is a key area of cash handling. So what does that mean? Well, you're doing 2 things. You're checking the banknote to see is it authentic. And if you think of the euro, when the euro was coming in, they designed it to be what's called machine readable. So they put features on the euro that would be recognized by technological solutions. So we about 2 years out from the euro, we went all around the world, met loads of manufacturers, lots of potential customers here locally, discussed it with them all. So when the euro came, we were seen as, these guys know what they're talking about. So we actually did really, really well, Conal, at that time. I mean, it was huge for us. I mean, that day was just incredible. We sold 10,000 different units all over the country.
I love those kind
banks,
of wins in business.
Retailers,
Yeah.
Every town and village in Ireland we had. So we were like, Amazon before Amazon for about 3-4 weeks. We were sending out kits, as they were called, but they were basically pallets of counting machines, sorting machines, coin counters, forgery detectors. So these sorters, what they basically do is they'll check that the note is real, but they'll also, to answer your crinkly comment, they'll check is the note suitable to be reissued again. And that was the second phase of a big surge in our business. So about 10 years after the euro, the banknote recycling framework came in, an EC directive. And,
I never knew there was one.
So, if you go to an ATM somewhere around the country, there's a good chance that the money that comes out of that ATM might have gone through one of our devices before that. So they put money into ATMs that have been checked by ECB-approved note sorters. That's how the system works. And so our success has been mainly initially on the very big ones, but then more recently on desktop ones. So now you can buy for very small money a small device the size of a printer that will do what huge machines like ocean-going things used to do years ago, because technology's got everything smaller. And there's fantastic technology in these things, ultrasonics,
But
to feel the banknote as it goes through.
But they'll
rapidly.
also do all of that for the notes that we're not going to use. I'm still convinced that we will not be using cash, crinkly cash.
Certainly, I'd say a lot of people are speculating for a long time that it's going to go, but it's hanging in very tenaciously. And I don't think cash is going to go. Maybe in 10 years' time there'll be something else that comes in instead of it. But I think a lot of people really like cash. You and I may not use it all the time, but there's still a lot of demand for cash and for handling cash and sorting cash.
I'm going to run out of time now, but I have to ask you about fraud in any kind of cash machines. Mm-hmm. It is fraught with fraud or fraught with fraud, whichever way you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. Anything we can do?
Well, the devices that we would supply are all ECB approved, and not only are they tested every year, the software is tested every year, but there's a constant battle on the one side between counterfeiters and on the other side between the manufacturers of these machines.
And I presume the counterfeiters are winning, are they?
No, I wouldn't think so. No, I wouldn't think so. No, certainly not. I mean, we haven't had any issues. We've caught lots of counterfeits over the years, absolutely. But
any big one?
A few anecdotal things where some poor devil handed over $4,000 to somebody and they were gone. When the person came to the bank to lodge it, and our device caught it for this poor unfortunate man, and he was told, "You're after losing $4,000 for something." Those kind of things happen all the time, but not with the devices. Yeah. They're more likely that you'll take it into your hand, and some of the forgeries are very smart. I mean, they're very, very well made. But the devices, as I say, are ahead of that. But the latest thing we're doing is in the healthcare sector. We're working with hospitals, and we created our own solution with a German partner for ward ordering. So when you're in hospital and they ask you, what would you like for dinner tomorrow?
You say, I don't want anything, none of that food.
Well, I'm telling you, having been in hospital recently, hospital food has got an awful lot better.
Okay, well, that's good news.
But we have an Android tablet system for taking the orders, and it's all connected to the hospital management system, patient management system. So the right patient gets the right food at the right time, and the right diet for them. It makes sure that no harm is done, and they get a much better patient outcome because of that. And it does away with thousands a year cost of paper, and you don't have paper disease transmission or whatever. I don't know if
they even had paper. I think they just say,
"Oh, absolutely."
No, I was thinking more about the ladies who used to come around and say, "Do you want dinner?" And it was,
oh yeah, well, most places now you get a very nice choice, and in fact, it's got very competitive. And I think I've certainly seen a few of the hospitals that we deal with. The food is fantastic. I better not say which ones, or they'll all be given out.
No, because you're saying it's fantastic. The second last question will have to be: is the future of Jeweltron international? The world awaits.
Not at the moment. Not immediately, but we certainly believe that there's some legs on the software side of the business. That we've 2 or 3 solutions coming through. Some of the healthcare space and others, which we'll tell you about, Conal, first when it's ready to go.
I like that.
So, future's looking bright. Still got lots of energy. Still got lots of get up and go, and we have a great team on board. So, you can continue to count on Jeweltron.
And if you get into a software business, though, that's a completely different one. You won't be going knocking on local banks or hospitals. That needs an international sales force.
If
see where I'm going with this?
If we decide to go international, yes, we would.
Oh, well, hang on a second now. You just said you were.
Well, no, I said this. We are definitely developing the software products, but with the decision to go fully international, let's say we probably do the UK or maybe France first. We have a German partner who they're looking after the German market. So we've no grand plan to go worldwide just yet, Conal, but we haven't ruled it out.
Well, one thing that you'll need if you do go worldwide is you'll need a new member of team. So that's why we always ask, who would you hire in a heartbeat?
Well, I'd say this man has passed, but if he was around, I think one of my heroes was Fergal Quinn. I think when we started the business, he was one of the people we looked up to as that's best practice. That's the way to do it. And
he did set a standard at almost anything that he did, didn't he?
He was superb. He was superb. And I always remember I had a brother who worked in there for years said that when they were hiring staff, they looked for people who looked you in the eye and smiled in the first 30 seconds. And if that didn't happen, they weren't right for them. And if you think about it, it's a great kind of a gift to somebody that you give them your full attention and you're present and you're happy to look after them. And that's, what I like to see with our team.
I hope you're noticing with me that I'm looking at you and smiling at you.
You are, absolutely.
That's, everybody, I think, anybody who ever knew Fergal, he was just superb. Different. He was brilliant. Yeah. And he was authentic, which is actually different as well, because
big fan.
It wasn't just a matey-uppy.
No, a big fan of him, yeah.
That is Dave Byrne, co-founder of Jeweltron, and happy 30th anniversary to Jeweltron. And thank you very much for joining us on That Great Business Show.
Subscribe today to That Great Business Show on your favourite podcast platform, including Apple and Spotify.
Everyday accounting can be a bit of a drama for SMEs. However, BigRedCloud.com takes the drama away with its simple and easy to use cloud-based accounting and payroll software designed for SME owners. Raise and send invoices, manage VAT reports and obligations, run management reports, link directly to Irish banks, automatically import purchase invoices, and so much more. All with 5-star customer support. BigRedCloud.com, 100% Irish owned and a proud member of Team GBS.
Make one small switch. Switching from shaving foam to all-natural de facto shaving oil will give you the smoothest, softest shave ever. Switching from shaving oil to de facto helps stop 20 million non-recyclable shaving foam cans go to landfills every year. Switching from shaving oil to de facto will save your skin, your pocket, and your planet. DeFactoShave.com.
We want to hear from you, so do please follow our LinkedIn page, and anyone at all can have a chat with us there, where we now have 1,100 plus followers, and it's where we now are sourcing many of the great companies we feature on That Great Business Show. And we're also our contrarians on Team GBS and like to challenge the orthodoxy. For example, how many times has your business mentor said you cannot make money just hanging around? Often, I'd say, but it's just not true. I'm joined by a man who makes his money from just that, hanging around. Jed McDonnell is founder at the UK-based Climbing Hangar, a chain of indoor rock climbing centres with operations in Liverpool, London, Swansea and Plymouth. And they've recently raised a further £4 million sterling to keep expanding. Climbing Hangar has been on the go for 11 years, but Jed now wants to double his number of outlets in the next 18 months. So you could say that Jed isn't hanging around anymore. Jed McDonnell, welcome to That Great Business Show. I love a good pun. I'm sorry.
Well, they're just, you can't get better than a bad joke, can you?
I love the accent. I better explain. It is from Liverpool, originally Lisburn.
Yes, Lisburn, yeah.
But you left Lisburn in 86, you told me.
I did, yes. There's plenty of time for the accent to fade a little bit. I did have a Brummie accent at one point, because when I first moved to England, I went to Wolverhampton, so I sounded Brummie within a couple of years and then just moved around a lot. And
does that mean that you're very musical?
No.
Oh, because very often musical people have that ear and they pick up accents. There you go.
Well, I do pick up accents incredibly fast, so I've had all of them. So I think now I've just had too many, and it's just like if you mix too many paints, you just get some sort of unusual grey colour.
By the end of this, you'll be speaking with a pronounced South Dublin accent.
Okay, let's see how we get on.
Okay, tell us all about that, about the Climbing Hangar. Hangar.
Yes.
Not Hanger, not the other one.
Yeah, that's one of those decisions that in time you think, I wish we'd probably, spelt it in the more obvious to spell way, but we weren't thinking too much at the time. I suppose the sort of overview of the Hangar journey is I started it with a friend called Crispin, who's also a very dedicated climber, and there was no business plan. It was a lifestyle business. We wanted to open a climbing wall. Crispin built them, and he needed somebody a bit more managerial. And any of my friends will tell you I'm one of the least responsible people they know, but compared to Crispin, I'm much more managerial. So off we went, and we basically, for the first 4 years, it was a bit of a party of going climbing, creating climbing for people, and just indulging our absolute passion, really. And that was its beginnings. And then globally and nationally, bouldering really started to take off.
Now, you call it bouldering. I
Yes.
call it climbing. What is the difference, or is there?
Climbing, if you like, is the suitcase term that contains all of the versions of going up things.
Okay.
It's like running, right? So bouldering is very much shorter, gymnastic, much more technically demanding climbing. So, you'd be thinking at the big scale, most people would say, what's the highest you've climbed? Because they're thinking Everest, or they've seen Free Solo about Yosemite. So, and there's all of these different subsections of climbing, and bouldering is the most distilled, if you like, that's very much about the movement. So it gets down to the hardest possible moves. Once you get really good, it's about the hardest possible moves that you can manage, whereas the bigger climbs are more of an endurance event.
So I'm now going to ask you the question that they all ask you is, how tall or how high up do you go bouldering?
Well, at an indoor centre, more or less, it's very rare to go higher than 4.5 metres, but most walls are coming down a little bit to around 4 metres. And again, as we've developed the industry, we've found that's about optimum for creating enough climbing to go at, enough height to make it feel spicy, but actually to keep the risk as low as possible.
4 meters.
Meters,
That's 12 odd feet or thereabouts.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Doesn't sound, I'm sure it is, but it doesn't sound terribly high.
No, and that's because you're really trying to, we solve problems. In fact, the climbs that you have in a bouldering centre are called a boulder problem. And that's very much because at the beginning, you're trying to find something that you can't do. And then you have to solve it, which is why it's such a hyper social sport, because normally you'll climb with your friends, tall ones, bigger ones, stronger ones, flexible ones, and together with your bodies and outlooks, you solve this problem together. And that's the attraction, really, is it's the solving element. So, and you are looking for something that is just beyond reach. And that's sort of the beating heart of the thing, really, rather than height. Because as you go higher, invariably each of the individual movements have to be a little bit easier, because if they're all maximum, obviously you run out of steam pretty fast. So when you're climbing what we would call routes, things that are, 10 meters upwards, really, that's a bit more of a power endurance event. So the climbing will be sort of 75 to 85%, and then your forearms tire in a different way. It's like the difference between a 400-meter sprint and a half marathon.
You probably don't know this about me, but I've climbed walls. I have climbed climbing walls, but you're not climbing walls. And I was all tethered up and everything else. You do it. When you fall off your wall, you fall.
Onto the crash mats, yeah.
How?
That's all right, really. Obviously, I've been doing it for like 20 odd years now. And I look at these people playing things like football and rugby with all of their broken ACLs and other injuries. I'm like, whoa, it looks a bit risky, that football stuff.
But you've made a right little business. Now, I gave you only 4 centres. You now have
6.
Building
so number 7.
I'm already out of date, and you are chucking money at it. Why are people literally flocking to it?
I think bouldering is one of those absolutely fascinating sports that represents sort of where culture is at a point in time. I can guarantee if we'd done this 20 years ago, no one would have came bouldering. Absolutely. So I think people are looking for something different when they go and do something physical now. And I think people are moving away from, I suppose, what I would consider to be transactional. Now, I'll make a bold statement that I'll probably have to row back from. And for me, I think exercise is a bit transactional. And I say this as somebody who's run ultra marathons and climbed pretty much every spare moment I've ever had. Exercise that is to get fitter. There's nothing inherently valuable in the thing that you're doing other than what it gets you. It's a bit like a 20 euro note. The thing only has value in terms of what it gets you. Whereas when you go climbing, it's the process, it's going climbing that is enjoyable. And you might go climbing in order to get better at climbing, in which case, what do? You go climbing again. So the value is contained within the activity. It's complete. And there's plenty of sports like this, but I think bouldering has got to intersect with a uniquely social element where, we can go climbing together despite being of different abilities. I can bring my mum in and what have we. And the space isn't segregated. So there's a beginner climb, there's intermediates, all the way through to world class. So we can all hang out. So I can, particularly if you think our core business is modern young professionals who classically have got money, but they're time poor. If I go to the running club with my wife, we both run. She'll be in one group, I'll be in another. So it's not time together. If we go climbing, we can be together and she can be doing the one that's suitable for her. And likewise, I can do the same. So you're ticking a number of boxes at once that sort of fit into this particular zeitgeist. If I'm busy, I want social, I want it to be a bit cool and interesting. I want it to stimulate my mind and my body. So it sort of sits at this intersection that I think is quite unique to now.
And we are, as I keep reminding people, a business show, not a sports show or a bouldering show. Yep. So I'm really interested in what you just said there about the addressing the young professionals. How do you tap into them and the zeitgeist around them?
So I think it's about sort of the construction of the proposition, really. If we sold it as sport, then we're competing in the leisure market. And the leisure market is big, it's loud, it's valuable, and there's a lot of money out there, and there's a lot of very, very clever marketing out there. So I think fundamentally what we're trying to do is stay as far away from being a commodity as possible. So I think what that requires is that when people walk in, most of our new customers, they're walking in looking for a new kind of exercise, right? That's basically what's happening on day one. And then so our goal is within 2 hours of converted them into somebody who thinks, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Somebody I didn't know just cheered me on. Somebody else spoke to me. So there's a range of different surprise experiences that I think we can deliver. And basically, I think we're trying to sell something in a way where I'm not targeting why you feel bad about yourself. There's no promise in this. It's basically saying, this thing is incredibly good fun. Do you want to have a go? And that's it. You don't need to feel bad about yourself. You don't need to have an aspiration of a future self. And I think that message can be quite honest, engaging. And then when it lands well, I know individual customers who have probably brought in values in the multiple tens of thousands of pounds because they've been so compelled by the experience. They've brought somebody else, they've brought their office, they've met people in the gym, they've brought them, they've got people that they've met who they've now married, and and there's an entire ecosystems and like mini subcultures that exist around a single customer who's become a passionate advocate. And I think for me, if we can continue to make those people make real meaningful differences in people's lives, then they kind of go out and they do the work for you because you've done something real and they want to share that. I mean, we all do. If you find something amazing, you want to go and share it with the people that you care about.
To date, you have collected around 10 million sterling, is that it?
10 million.
And most recently, another 4, at least of that, you've got 10 and 4 million recently. Where is the growth going to stop? I mean, you're only starting.
Yeah, absolutely only starting. I would be stunned if we didn't end up with a minimum of 50 to 60 facilities in the United Kingdom alone.
This is from the guy who was messing just a few years ago.
Yeah, honestly. Not only messing, I was so broke at the beginning. I was living in a cupboard at the back for 15 months, actually, cooking on a camp stove and sleeping on a bit of spare crash matting. I mean, that was...
Things have improved somewhat since then.
Yeah, have a house and everything.
Whoa!
So I know, it's wild.
But you, as I mentioned at the very beginning, you're from Lisburn in Ireland, and yet no sign of a climbing hangar in Ireland?
Not just yet. I think, well, obviously now, sadly, we have Brexited. That makes sort of coming to the south a little bit more tricky. So we'd have to understand that.
Road is still the same.
I know. And there's probably some new laws or something that I'd need to get my head around. I mean, Belfast is definitely sort of on our major list. I mean, particularly, I think, from the changes I've seen in Belfast over the last 10 years, I think 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been an ideal city. Whereas I think now you can see there is a really new, exciting dynamic amongst young people in Belfast. And I think, the internet has probably done wonders for broadening horizons there. And people are thinking, well, I want, what other people have. And so I think there's a good shift there. So it won't be long.
One of the things that is stopping you from coming into the Republic is insurance. Discuss.
Yes, well, now I don't know too many details about it, but I sit on our professional trade body, the Association of British Climbing Walls, with a cracking fella called Dave
Say that again, the Association of
British Climbing Walls, or the ABC.
I love these the organisations. There always is one, isn't there?
There has to be. Well, the thing is, you've got to do all of the boring work of actually, like professional standards and stuff that no one really wants to do. But actually, when you've been in the business a while, you're like, this is really valuable if we get these done and share them. But yeah, Dave Ayton sits on that board with me. He lives here in Dublin, and he runs Awesome Walls here in Dublin, and he was sort of extolling some of the pains that they were going through. So it's underwriters understanding risk and then how they would translate that and then how that intersects with specific laws, for instance. And I don't know the exact nature of the problem, but it reached crisis point in Irish indoor climbing walls. We're nearly uninsurable briefly, but that bridge has been crossed now. It's fine. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those that needs some more details.
Few.
Now,
back to your world domination. Are you doing something, when I say you, is your company, Climbing Hangar, doing something that others are not in the fact that you're going to go on this big growth path? For example, why stop in the UK? Why not, as I say, take on Europe, the US, or the world?
Well, definitely that would be in phase 2.
I'm laughing to myself. Here's the guy, the kind of hippie type guy, who is now going to become super corporate, and you'll be climbing in a 3-piece suit very soon.
Well, if I really, this is this is going to be a long run up to the wicket in terms of answering this question. What's changed? When you've been sort of a freewheeling hippie pretty much most of your existence, I've went on holiday and slept on disused train stations in order just to go climbing, and I was happy about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
you are committed.
That was cool. I was happy with that. I felt very, very great about it. But I guess I got to a point where I realized I'd started to grow the business, but out of a defensive position. I thought, if I don't, what happens if genuine corporates come in and figure this out, right? So I thought I'd best make some changes and a bit of growth and a bit of sense. And then as you gain a little bit more, I can't think of a better word, so we'll say like power and influence, particularly if you're somebody who is not especially interested in power or money or anything really.
It goes to your head, I know.
Well, so you say, like, how do I use it, And you kind of go, well, I can actually do something useful with this, particularly. So for me, this has been the most interesting exercise of my own political views, which is, how do I do good in the world generally? And if I'm going to grow a business, there's ways and means of doing that. And can I do it by benefiting as many people as possible?
And did I see that you're now employing at least 100? Because I'm out of date on the numbers of centres that you have. How many people have you got?
I tell you what, I was out of date the other day. I thought it was 148, and I asked Leandra, our head of HR, and yesterday, I thought it was 148 about 10 days ago. It turns out it's 162 now.
Wow.
I know.
That is really great.
Yeah, it's crumbs.
So the next step will be how many more units quickly?
So we've got to build another 3 next year. That's the plan.
What do you need to build these centres?
About £1.3 million per centre.
But you need a big hangar or
just a big
warehouse?
Space. Yeah. So now that's become incredibly complicated. I think as one of the unintended elements of lockdown was so many businesses went digital. So it meant that we are now in fierce competition for
Amazon.
Big
yourselves and
boxes.
Amazons are locking horns.
Oh my goodness. I'm told they own something like 40% of the sheds in Britain or something like that. It's wild.
And have an option on the other 60%.
I know. It's not very helpful for me.
So what could anybody do to help you find you warehouses or...
Yeah, but basically that.
Because they are tucked away,
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought these monster buildings would be easy to find on account of their size. However, not so. But yeah, so you're looking for a building in the right place. I mean, it's ultimately, it's people like me and younger, largely going climbing. So a degree of convenience after work is going to be pretty paramount. People are not going to drive an hour, really, on a Wednesday night. They might on a Saturday or a Sunday, but not during the week. So convenience, size, in obviously sensible terms are those key things that we're out in the market looking for.
What's the oldest person who climbs with you guys at the moment, do you think?
Oh, around 70.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So it's a skill sport. So whilst the power may fade as you grow, so as you age, what's absolutely not fading is the skill and mastery that you've learned from moving over rocks over all of the years.
You still fall onto the ground.
It's still there. Yeah, gravity remains fairly equal.
The final question we are going to ask is, who would Jed McDonnell hire in a heartbeat?
In a heartbeat, I would employ Mary Portas of Portas Agency.
Yeah, now why? And people may know of her because she used to do, was it a Channel 4 TV program about shops and shopping? She's an expert in how to pitch your shop, isn't that?
Yeah, she absolutely made her name in Harvey Nichols. I think she was their creative director. I'm not exactly sure on what her title was, but she transformed Harvey Nichols.
Was she with Conran as well, maybe, was she?
I think so.
Yeah.
And then, so from that, she encountered issues at the board that she wasn't especially happy with, from what I understand. Then the government took her on as an advisor to help transform high streets. They conveniently ignored all of her recommendations.
And maybe in a way when the high street disappeared, but anyway, maybe they'll come back.
So, but what she's done now is she now does a podcast called The Kindness Economy. That has blown my mind. She is a savvy businesswoman. She is incredibly clever, but she has adopted and assimilated some pretty excellent, I think, just broad range views on whether it's environmentalism or treating people decently, and like thinking about this as this is the canvas that business needs to paint on to continue to engage younger audiences. So if we don't paint on that canvas effectively, how will we continue to grow? And I think she does such a good job of that because she's bringing all of her savvy to answering this question. So rather than seeing it as a barrier, she just says it's the new trading environment and works on it from there. And the people she interviews is brilliant. And also she's a bit tongue-in-cheek, so, but when you're just dealing with someone who's really clever.
And when she gets on to us and says, what's my job? What is her job going to be in the climbing hangar?
Oh, What is her job going to be? Well, I mean, I suppose I'd probably put her as the director of community or culture, because I think she'd keep us on a pretty short leash in terms of doing the right thing, but still driving the returns.
You just want to go off climbing again and leave other people doing the work.
That's a fact. But, the work, it turns out, is much more fascinating than I ever would have imagined. So, it's
the joy of business. Forget
cool.
about your boulders.
Yeah.
Love business.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
I'm trying to love both simultaneously, create some time pressure, but, so far it's kind of working out.
Jed MacDonald, founder of the Climb Higher, thank you so much for joining us on That Great Business Show.
Thank you, Carol.
Thinking of travel? If so, make sure to make De Facto, the world's best shaving oil, your choice of travel companion. A 25 millilitre bottle of De Facto means no hassle at airports, no bulky cans to carry, and the guarantee of the world's best shave. DeFactoShave.com.
Everyday accounting can be a bit of a drama for SMEs. However, BigRedCloud.com takes the drama away with its simple and easy-to-use cloud-based accounting and payroll software designed for SME owners. Raise and send invoices, manage VAT reports and obligations, run management reports, link directly to Irish banks, automatically import purchase invoices, and so much more. All with 5-star customer support. BigRedCloud.com, 100% Irish-owned and a proud member of Team GBS.
Backing great women-led businesses on every show. That Great Business Show.
If you want something done, well, give it to a busy person to do. That goes the way the old adage goes. My next guest is the queen of pivots. Rani DeBry was at one time Miss Moneypenny, and we'll get to that, then served as a director with the World Trade Center in Dublin. Nowadays, she's one of fewer than 400 people in the world qualified in the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. We'll also get to that. But as well as another handful of things that she's involved in, she also has launched a new skincare range, as you do. Rani DeBry, busy lady, welcome to That Great Business Show.
Thank you. That's quite an introduction. I love the way that you said Queen of Pivots, because I feel like that's just a really nice way of saying I have probably a very short attention span.
No, it's because you've done lots and lots of things. And I am right in, if you want something done, you give it to Miss Moneypenny, Rani DeBry to do, because, you are doing lots of things now. Up to you. Which ones do you want to talk about?
Which one makes you most curious?
At the moment, I suppose the skincare range, because you and I had a chat about this, and it's not any old skincare range.
It's not.
But I am interested in how many skincare ranges can the world take?
Well, what's interesting about this skincare range is that it was not born out of the idea of being a skincare range. It was born out of the idea of thinking about the end user. So I know you've just sprayed some on your face. I hope you liked it.
It's a nice smell.
It's a nice smell, and it does something magical as well.
And it's called Naira, because you've forgotten to actually brand it when you're talking to me. You better brand it from now on.
Naira
Otherwise,
Beauty.
You'll be giving out to yourself, should I say. So, Naira is your skincare range.
Naira Beauty, yeah, Naira Beauty.
And it wasn't aimed at me, I can tell you.
Give me time. No, it wasn't aimed at you. It was aimed at me, because Naira was born when I realized that shortly after I turned 40, I started to feel a little bit invisible. I started to feel, not as valuable, I guess. I started to feel like I was being measured purely by, in society, by how I looked. And it began when one day I went to a beauty counter, and the girl behind the beauty counter asked me what age I was, which was, kind of okay, because I knew she was trying to figure out which kind of skincare range to give me. But when I told her I was just over 40, she made me shuffle slightly, and she said, okay, you need to come over here. And she pointed me towards a range of products. And then she started pointing at my skin and my forehead and my lines around my eyes. And she started insinuating that I should do something about that. And basically, I found myself spending nearly 200 euros, walking away, feeling really, really terrible about myself. And I realized then that shouldn't happen ever again.
Rani DeBry, I might not know an awful lot about this area, but surely to God, there must be 1,000 brands all pitching at the same demographic. Call it what you will.
Right.
The
It's
older
true.
skin.
But look at what they say to them, right? They tell you as a woman, reverse wrinkles, erase time, renew, become newer. just basically different ways of saying, stop being who you are and look younger. I don't want to be Peter Pan. I never did. Do I look in the mirror and do I love my stretch marks and the lines on my face? Probably not all that much, but would I change them? Absolutely not. And I'm really sick of being told that I ought to in order to remain valid in society. And the beauty industry, I feel like I have this superpower of invisibility. And the beauty industry knew, I wanted it as a child, and the beauty industry knew that I was going to start feeling more and more invisible when I was getting older. And they're capitalizing on the fact that that's not what I want anymore. I want to actually be seen and heard.
But the beauty industry, and we've had quite a number of people in that industry onto the podcast, the research that goes into the products. Now, I'm not talking about the actual science that goes into it, but they know which buttons to press.
Of course.
So therefore, surely there's something that maybe you're missing that they know.
Maybe I'm the fool. I don't know. I don't think so, though.
But what happens next? I mean, if you are now producing this and it's being produced where?
In Cork.
In Cork.
Yeah.
You should
by
give
Linus
them
Life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I partnered with Linus Life. We're working together.
So you are now up against, and I'm not going to name the big brands because they do enough of that. And if they want to advertise with us, you know where to find us. But you are now up against the big boys and girls. And how can you take them on successfully?
I don't think it's really about taking them on, because the first thing is that wasn't what we set out to do.
But you have a business.
We have a business.
And you have to keep in business. So you have to keep selling.
Of course we do. But what people think about business when they start in business, what I've come across in all of my entrepreneurial career, and I guess that's what I brought to the table, what I've come across is that the mistake a lot of people make is when they go out into business, they think, how can I make $1 million? Where are my targets? How can I make 2 million, 3 million? We've changed that. We have changed our vision on that in terms of saying, instead of how can we make 1 million, how can we serve 1 million people? How can we change 1 million different women's thoughts about themselves? How can we see 1 million people? And
does that
I am
pay
one of these
the bills?
Women. Does it pay the bills? Well, does any business pay the bills?
Of course it does.
If it does it right, if it speaks to the right audience, if it does the right things, if it has a clear vision and if it sticks to its plan, and if it's really authentic. I mean, if what you do is you set out your vision and you sell out, maybe you might pay the bills in the short term, but you're not going to stick around. When Aidan Corcoran, who's the CEO of Linus Life, when he and I got together, and we're friends going back a long way, we've got a very similar view to the world. He's probably he's a finer entrepreneur than I could ever hope to be. But we agreed on certain things, and one of the main things was this is a marathon, not a sprint. We wanted to make a brand that made a difference, that spoke to people, that changed, even if it changes one life. I mean, talk about the ripple effect of that, right? I mean, who doesn't know a woman in their life, their mother, their aunt, their older sister? Who doesn't know a woman that would just love for a second to feel appreciated for who she is and what she is, and to be seen and heard and felt and understood? Really, that's what we want to do.
What is the grand ambition, so? I mean, are you going to...
For me?
Are you going to try to sell millions of bottles, or no hope that somebody writes to you in a letter to say you changed my life? I'm looking for the business angle here.
Yeah, well, both really. That's why Aidan and I are involved together, because I think when the conversation started, it started because I went to Aidan and said, I'm thinking about this woman. This is how she feels. This is what she thinks. And I know this woman because this woman is me. And I want to do something to solve this woman's problem. But the only thing I know how to do is entrepreneurship. But Aidan's, like I said, a finer entrepreneur than I could ever hope to be. He definitely brought more of the business angle, where he was able to ask the very same question you did. And my answer to that is, if we get to a point where one day one woman writes to us and says, you've changed my life, you've changed my world, what it takes to have gotten to that means that we've done really, really well.
Okay.
I think money and success is a byproduct of that.
Right. Distribution, sales, who's going to carry it? How are you going to distribute it? Is it a worldwide audience? What's the business angle?
We have taken some real, very, very clear decisions on the positioning of this, and we did it from day one. Really exciting news that I'm delighted to tell you and your audience first before anyone else is on Tuesday we're launching our pop-up shop, which is bricks and mortar retail in Oliver Plunkett Street in Cork.
Good for you. Good.
The video of it just this morning. It was amazing.
And is this for Christmas?
It's just for Christmas, yeah. But really, we're going 100% right now, D2C. So it's on the website, so nairabeauty.com. If you want to get it, you got to go there.
And you better spell out Naira. It's N-Y or A-H,
yes,
isn't it?
N-Y, so November, Yankee.
Go on.
Romeo. Alpha Hotel.
Well done, you.
The phonetic alphabet. nairabeauty.com.
Okay. So it's nairabeauty.com. All right.
nairabeauty.com, yeah.
And that is going to be the start of the empire, is it?
Well, it is, yeah.
Okay.
So we...
because I have to go back now, because I said at the intro is that we would talk about Miss Moneypenny in a second. But what's this other thing? Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS?
EOS, yeah. So...
Oh, you call it EOS, not EOS.
Well, I mean, we can call it EOS if you like.
And I have put down 400, but it's 382 people in the world or something.
Yeah, you've done your research.
Well, you sent it to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That always helps.
It's around, I'm the only person in Ireland qualified to do it. And basically...
And what is it?
So the entrepreneurial operating system is basically just a way for a scaling business to run themselves. It's a system on which an entrepreneur would operate their business, hence the name, to allow them to really clarify their vision, get a healthy team, build together, build really well, and achieve real traction. Because one of the reasons that many entrepreneurial dreams go unrealized is because of the lack of traction in their business. So entrepreneurs typically, they have ADD. They have a million different ideas every 20 minutes. And the thing is that when you have a business that's run that way, you have this weird, organizational whiplash that develops, and you never really get traction on your business. So what the EOS system does is that it helps entrepreneurs harness that and really achieve true success and scale their business.
And is there any difference between EOS and, say, an MBA, MBS, or...
There is a big difference, because EOS is very much, there aren't any silver pills, magic bullets. There's nothing like that. It's very, very practical. And also it can only be, I only work with people who are, 1.5, 2 million and upwards. They have a team of 10 people and more. They've already experienced a significant journey, a part of the entrepreneurial journey. And it's very hands-on. It's very practical.
Which means, this is the hard question for you, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Well... because I'm worth it.
But
see what I did there?
I did. But what you also didn't do is you didn't tell me how much it's going to cost. How much would it typically cost? Are we talking about thousands or tens of thousands per annum for somebody to get this EOS system?
Yeah. So basically, I typically would work with my clients for a period of about 2 years, after which they would graduate, but usually they would want to kind of keep a facilitator. And I'm an external facilitator. That's basically what I do. And I come in and I would spend about 1 day every quarter with my clients. Over 2 years, it probably costs about 30 grand. And that might sound like a lot, but I always say it's cheaper than the person hiding in your business.
Put words around that again, as they say.
So when you're a visionary and you're running your business and you're an entrepreneur, you've scaled your business past 5, 10, 15 people, you're not necessarily you haven't got accountability built into every level of your business. And that's because maybe there's some dysfunction in your leadership team. Maybe there's something missing. Maybe there are not the right people in the right seats, as Jim Collins would say. But you're so far you're near the top. You're the visionary, right? You're the entrepreneur. So you can't necessarily see what's going on down there. Somewhere in your business, I can guarantee you're losing money, you're losing time, you're losing something. And usually when I come along within 90 minutes, I can tell you exactly where that is. So, like I say, it's cheaper than the person hiding in your business. If the lowest paid person in your business is 25K a year, plus all the other costs that go with it, it's cheaper than the person hiding in your business.
That's a good pitch. I buy that. Now, come here to me. I also have to...
The other thing
yes, please.
Here's the other thing, right? I'm really confident about it. And I'm confident to the point that I'll tell you that if someone spends a day with me and they don't get value from that day, they don't have to pay me.
Free day with Rani. Is that the offer?
It depends what we do on that day.
Strictly business.
Well, if you want to take me shopping, different story. But
now, bring me back to Miss Moneypenny, because when you and I first met, which is quite some years ago, you were Miss Moneypenny. And I want you to do two things. First of all, very briefly, because we are going to run out of time, tell the world what Miss Moneypenny was. This was a great brand name, I always thought. And secondly, tell them the story. I know what you're going to, you know what I'm going to ask.
I know what you're going to ask.
Moving the gold. That has stuck with me. And I was just talking to somebody else about it just a few minutes ago, and it stuck with me. So Miss Moneypenny, who was she? Where is she?
Okay, Miss Moneypenny Miss Moneypenny was a a concierge service. So what we did was basically, in real plain speak, we solved some really crazy problems for people. We started out as a virtual assistance business back in the day when no one understood the terms virtual assistant. So I was, really selling to heathens. They were unconverted. And it evolved. As you said, the queen of pivots. I pivoted. And by the end, I had 5 revenue streams, but the most lucrative of which was a concierge, which was really serving the high net worth and the ultra high net worth market with, like I said, flying their poodles around the world.
And shifting their gold.
Shifting the gold.
And the question is, how do you shift a
gold?
large amount of gold from Ireland to Switzerland?
Right. So it wasn't so much, this particular story wasn't so much about the shifting of the gold.
It was for me.
Well, it was the verifying of the gold. And
that's only part of it. So start at the beginning.
So the client had purchased some gold and they wanted a lot of gold. And they wanted to make sure that the gold was the gold that, first of all, they wanted to make sure that it was the gold that they thought they had purchased, which was that it was the value. And then secondly, the quantity of it. And they needed to get it from one place to another and eventually ending up in Switzerland. So they just tasked us with the headline of that, get my gold from here to there and make sure it's real and make sure it's what I paid for.
And it's not that straightforward.
It really is not that straightforward. It is probably what you have to
give it to me in a minute now.
A minute, right. So basically we had to establish what it meant to verify gold, and basically gold that remains in what we call the chain of integrity once it lands in Switzerland, if it stays in the vaults that are validated by the London Bullion Exchange, doesn't need to be verified once it lands in Switzerland. But if it comes from an external source, it needs to be assessed by a person called an assayer. And in all of Europe, there's only one man who can do it. And all of my NDAs prevent me from saying his name. And even if I did, you couldn't find him. But it's held in a vault.
Okay, I don't think I'll need him for a while.
In Switzerland. It's held in a vault in Loomis in Switzerland. And until he arrives, it can't be released. And only then can it go in. And that is, to find that man in the first place was probably about 80% of the task because, like I said, he's invisible. He's the Jason Bourne.
I think, did you tell me that you have to weigh it, assay it, put it into your Securicore, whatever car, ship it, pick it up, weigh it, assay it at the other end in case somebody was meddling with it on the journey.
Right, and it depends on the method of transport.
I was listening to you.
You were. Photographic memory as well. So you do have to do all of that, but again, it depends on the chain of transport and it depends on the method of delivery. So if it remains in the chain of integrity, which is how the London Bullion Exchange refer to it, if it remains in the chain of integrity, there are fewer checks and balances. But in this particular case, it had not remained in the chain of integrity. It had entered and exited again. So when it made the re-entry, that's where all the problems came up. And that's why the assayer was required. And this particular gentleman had to get involved. And that's what kept my client happy.
That's going to keep me occupied now. I'm going to use it often.
You're going to start Googling, right?
No, I'm going to talk about the chain of integrity.
The chain of integrity for gold. When we meet again in 5 years, that's what we can talk about.
I just want to work with the chain of integrity.
Chain of integrity.
My final question.
Of course. Make it good.
In a heartbeat. Who would Rani de Bry hire in a heartbeat?
Right. I would hire. And actually, I'm actually going to, here's the thing. I'll answer that question in 2 parts. I know the answer, but I'm actually going to go about trying to do it, right? Because I have the opportunity to work with this man in February in Las Vegas. I would hire Chris Voss. He is an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. He runs an organization called the Black Swan Group out of the US, and they do hostage negotiation training. Now, I came across him because of all of my Moneypenny interests, and I kind of love all that stuff. But the reason I would hire him is because I believe and understand, and I know for a fact that everything in life is a negotiation. And it's how you approach that negotiation and using empathy to do it. And he's probably the best person on the planet to do it. So like I said, I'm going to get to spend the day with him in February. But if I was going to hire someone to work with me in a heartbeat, it would be him.
Will you bring him on to That Great Business Show? Please.
Is that a negotiation?
I would love to have the two of you on to see you, talk to you about empathy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Chris Voss, if you're listening,
Voss.
and he will be, of course, because we will tag him. We'll chase him down on social media.
I'm going to see you in February, Chris.
Well, Rani de Bry will see you. But we may see you shortly after that as well. Rani de Bry, of I don't know how many hats. Which do you want to say? NairaBeauty.com. Isn't that the one?
NairaBeauty.com, NYRAH.
That's the one you better check out.
NairaBeauty.com. And we're on, as of Tuesday, the 23rd, we're on Oliver Plunkett Street in Cork. And we're also going to be stocked in Kimono Boutique in Newcastle West, which was the best boutique outside Dublin, as named by Image Magazine. And we've got a kind of a special event, maybe I shouldn't say it, next week in in Dublin
You
as well.
are going to have to pay for an ad.
Oh, maybe. Well, let's talk about that. Let's start that negotiation.
Rani DeBry, thank you so much for joining us on That Great Business Show. And that is it from That Great Business Show, episode 62. And before we go, if you have young GAA fans in the house, do check out bonishdoorboardgame.ie online. Co-creator Anna Byrne, who we had on episode 59, talking about the board game that they've created. He tells me that Smith's toy stores have reordered due to demand, and they've only made 3,000 copies of what is a great game for 7 to 12-year-olds. So supplies are genuinely limited. Get yours now. And for those of you who would like to know more about the recently reported radical plans for Dublin Port, do check out our hour-long chat with Dublin Port CEO Eamon O'Reilly on episode 52 of That Great Business Show, when he told us all about the new bridge and parks that the city will benefit from in the coming couple of years. And my thanks, as always, to Brian Can Do Begley. It's the Can Do team here at the Dublin Podcast Studios, and he will be joined later on by Peter Can Do Rice, who will add some more Can Do sauce. See what I'm doing there, Rob?
I see what you're doing.
Making us the best sounding podcast on the planet by far. Team GBS wants to make more podcasts, so if your company wants the best podcast production team available, do give us a shout. You'll find us on thatgreatbusinessshow.com. We also want your ads. Wise organizations like Big Red Cloud is me, Ludros Nugatuchta. No, That Great Business Show is that great way to talk to Ireland's SMEs. Talk to us about our competitive rates. And my thanks to Mary Sadler of Cool Swan for sending us Katie Knight, Mary O'Leary for sending us Rani DeBry, Lorraine Quinn brought Jewel Tron to our attention, and I read about climbing hanger in a Charlie Taylor article in the Irish Times. And finally, my thanks to our sponsor, DeFactoShave.com, the world's, what is it, Rani?
Best shaving oil.
Hey,
see?
Try it just for a week, and like me, you'll be a forever convert. So for me, Conal O'Moran, until the next